What is the most messed up thing that happened in a children's TV show? I remember that episode of the Magic School Bus when that ginger dude took off his helmet in space after being told not to and his dome turned to ice or something like that. Spooked me as a kid. Too many episodes of Hey Arnold, like finding out Stoop Kid stayed on his stoop because he was abandoned there and was homeless, but hopelessly waiting for someone to come back for him. How Monkey Man was mentally ill and also homeless. That one where you learn Grandpa and his sister had a lifelong rift because the only good thing in their life as children, their puppy, got killed by a car in front of them and they each blamed the other. How Lila and her dad ask Otis to keep from being homeless. How the kids on the show routinely get mugged. Or how Mr. Hyan hates Christmas because that's the anniversary of the day he handed his baby daughter off to an American soldier to get her out of the war zone because he wasn't sure they'd survive. Then spent the rest of his life working to immigrate to America to try and find her only having the name of the city to work from and ended up missing her whole childhood because he was too poor to hire a private investigator until Helga literally sold the shoes off her feet to hire one to make Arnold happy. Oh, and how Helga is obsessed with Arnold because she grew up neglected by an alcoholic mother and aggressive narcissistic father who only cared about her older sister. And Arnold was literally the first person in her entire life to show her any kindness when, as a preschooler, he offered to share his umbrella because her parents forgot to take her to her first day of preschool and she had to walk in the rain by herself with no coat as a 4-year-old in what we can only assume is New York City. So yeah, that show was supremely jacked up. There was a story from Chicago's golden age of children's television. At WGN in the 1950s, a chimpanzee was the sidekick to a host and would do interstitial to Three Stooges shorts. One time they had a guest who had a parakeet that could perform various tricks. Here's the quote from the book. The bird, perched on the woman's hand, went through a series of routines as Grayson, the host, and Chatter, the chimpanzee, looked on. In the middle of the act, Chatter suddenly grabbed the bird, bit its head off, and, without missing a beat, placed the carcass back on the shocked woman's hand. As his guest crumpled to the floor, a stunned Grayson stared at his partner and the station cut quickly to a commercial. That's pretty messed up. For us in the UK, the Animals of Farthingwood graphic, gruesome death was a regular feature. It included Mr. and Mrs. Hedgehog getting run over. Whatever you do, dearest, don't curl up. Squish. Mr. Pheasant is shot dead as he stares in horror at his dead wife, shot earlier, who has been cooked and roasted. Sinuous the adder is choked to death by rats. The baby mice are impaled on thorns by a shrike. There were 24 deaths across 39 episodes, every one of them a major character. There was a very special anti-drug episode of the 80s cartoon Brave Stare. In this episode, a couple of kids get hooked on a new drug. At the end of the episode, one of the kids died from an overdose. 30+ years later, and I'm not sure how many children's shows even today would kill a kid. Like most of Courage the Cowardly Dog. That episode of Thomas the Tank Engine when Thomas visits the scrap heap where all the dead/dying trains are. I remember watching it as a kid and not even thinking about how Thomas is basically surrounded by a bunch of corpses or people left to die. Remember when SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs murdered and buried the health inspector? Not really as messed up as a lot of these, but still creepy. That episode of Tom and Jerry where Tom gets depressed and sits on a railroad track waiting for a train to come. Then Jerry comes to join him sitting down. The episode cuts to black and ends, and it never mentions it after that. Strange. I got another one. T&J episode in which Tom dies and goes to heaven, but he is not allowed in because he's been an asshole to Jerry. He is given a time limit for Jerry to forgive him or he will go to hell while he is up in heaven trying to get in. A dripping wet sack of something comes rolling in. It unties and out come a bunch of kittens, straight on through the pearly gates. I know I saw it as a kid, and it didn't even register with me. As an adult, my jaw dropped because, holy shit, what the actual fuck, man? There's this Hey Arnold episode called The Ghost Bride, and the story is basically that this lady was madly in love with her fiancé, but was stood up at the altar because he had fallen in love with her sister and married her the very next day. So the lady goes berserk and puts on her wedding dress, gets an axe from her basement, walks to the newlywed couple's home, kills them both in their beds, and when the cops come, she's rocking back and forth in a rocking chair next to the bodies, throwing rice on them and humming the wedding march. To finish it all off, she immediately jumps out of the window and kills herself. Either the series finale of Alf, in which Alf is captured by the government presumably to be experimented on, or the series finale of Dinosaurs, in which the entire civilization is destroyed. Henry the Tank Engine was bricked up inside an abandoned tunnel for having anxiety, while Ringo Starr mocked him. Not exactly on the children's show itself, but about 20 years ago during a midday episode of the Spider-Man cartoon, the news broke in to cover a live high-speed chase that ended in a standoff on a popular Los Angeles freeway. The suspect abruptly blew the top of his own head off with a rifle on live television. The top of his head literally flapped open like can of spaghettios. Camera caught everything. I assure you, kids watching that were never the same. Suppy sales in 1965. New Year's Day incident. On January 1st, 1965. Myth that having to work on the holiday, Sales ended his live broadcast by encouraging his young viewers to tiptoe into their still sleeping parents' bedrooms and remove those funny green pieces of paper with pictures of US presidents from their pants and pocketbooks. Put them in an envelope and mail them to me, Suppy instructed the children. Several days later, substantial amounts of money had begun arriving in the mail. Sales stated that the total amount received was in the thousands of dollars, but qualified that by stating that much of that was in play money. Sales said he had been joking, and that whatever real money had been sent would be donated to charity. But as parents' complaints increased, WNEW's management suspended Sales for 2 weeks. Some dude in SpongeBob literally shoved a coin up a horse's ass. I can't find the coin slot. Here it is. Comedy gold. Speaking from personal experience, it was when the Watergate hearings replaced my usual after-school helping of Batman, and it went on for months. Movie rather than TV show, but if I think of, that's really dark for kids, my mind always jumps to Clayton's death at the end of Tarzan. Dude accidentally hanging himself with a vine is pretty dark. I mean, Clayton was also basically an allegory for slavery and genocide, with his obsession with killing rare specimens and the way he caged up all Tarzan's family and put them on boats to be shipped back to England. So yeah, dark end to a dark story. SpongeBob. Two complete strangers pretending to be Patrick's parents. Who were they? Why did they do it? What was their plan? Things I've been thinking about since I was 7 years old. Also every episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog. As a child I remember being fairly traumatized over a series called David the Gnome, where he and his wife reach 400 and die together in the finale. They actually become cherry trees intertwined together in the next plane. I remember trying to explain to my mother why I was crying so hard watching the TV, but she didn't get it. A few years ago, don't remember the year, New Jersey accidentally played hardcore porn in the time slot for a children's TV show. They played Mandy Gets a Handy instead of Handy Manny. That one episode of Pingu where he has a nightmare. In the nightmare, a gigantic brown seal chases him while smiling creepily. This episode still gives me the spooks to this day. There is an episode of Scooby-Doo, one of the ones with Scooby, Shaggy and Scrappy, only where they are being chased around a pyramid by a mummy and they beat him by unraveling him. But then when they are leaving they turn round and footsteps are following them in the sand. They run away. Footsteps return to the pyramid, and then the episode ends. Only example in classic Scooby I think where the monster was real. Fair to say I've been scared of mummies ever since. I'm in my 20s. I think that lemon grab from Adventure Time was pretty messed up. But especially when he swallowed the other lemon grab after he broke his toy. The other lemon grab screaming in terror as he was being swallowed always got to me when I was a kid, and it still gets to me now. It was pretty fucked up when Invader Zim had a plan to harvest the organs of children to make himself seem human. At the end Zim was an enormous mass of stolen organs, while other kids were walking around with soda cans instead of lungs. Great show. Azula going insane at the end of Avatar scared me a lot as a kid. Plus the whole bloodbending episode is really dark the more you think about it. That episode of Teen Titans, where we learn about Raven's prophecy, has some very rappy undertones to it. Yeah, he just steadily burned more and more of her clothes off. Paraphrased, no matter how you fight or scream, there is nothing you can do to stop it. Oh, and there was that whole porn version. Probably either the reveal of the Air Nomad's genocide in Avatar or Bill Cipher's introductory scene, where he yanks a deer's teeth out of its head as a present in Gravity Falls. Original Magic School Bus, when the kids are inside salmon eggs, and the male salmon jizz all over them. The episode of Hey Arnold where we learn about the Vietnam War and the fall of Sagan, and how this one guy had to give up his daughter. Very traumatic watching as a little kid. Megatron executing Ironhide by shooting him in the head point blank as he crawled along the floor in Transformers the movie in 1986.